Hey everyone, Diavolo here, and today we are diving back into Jujutsu Kaisen and the current beatdown that is going on between two of the universe's strongest fighters. Yes, this is the decisive Satoru Gojo vs Ryomen Sukuna battle in the uninhabited, demon-infested district of Shinjuku. Or at least, everything that's kind of out so far. Who knows how long this fight's actually going to go on for. Nothing that I could think of throughout the series, bar maybe the Sukuna vs Maharaga battle, even comes close to the scale of cursed energy consumption or destruction that we bear witness to here. This is truly an amazing fight to behold and encapsulates everything that makes Jujutsu Kaisen so freaking good. So if you are new around here, make sure to subscribe to keep up to date with all of Jujutsu Kaisen, and if you do enjoy the video, make sure to leave a like and try and help push this video to 5k likes so that I know you're all interested and want to see more stuff just like this. But either way, sit back and relax as we watch Shinjuku get wiped from reality. Well, I guess I need to kind of take everything back to the exact moment where the fight kicked off, and of course massive manga spoilers for anyone who's an anime only and happened to stumble across this fight. Anywho's, as all of the sorcerers were lacking out discussing how to give Gojo a boost of confidence, as it's the first time they've ever really needed to do so, Gojo himself, accompanied by Gramps and Utahime, all with looks of determination, then roll up and get ready for battle. With everyone around feeling his aura, Yuji greets his sensei wholeheartedly and lets him know that he can't even get close because his technique's in the way. Gojo is slightly surprised by this, but after a moment ends up laughing while telling his boy to give it to him, causing Yuji to jump up and slap his sensei on the back. Then, following on the same path, every other sorcerer patted Gojo on the back as he rolled through the group on his way to the battlefield. Walking through a skyscraper with Gojo now, Ajichi notes that it feels like ages since he was last here, yet in reality it's only been just over a month now. Wanting to know what the realm felt like, Gojo explains to him that the prison realm was like when you're mad busy with work that it flashes in a week. However, the feeling's so draining that you'd never want to experience it again. After a few moments, Gojo inquires about the people in the basement of Shibuya's metro station, where all of that chaos had started back in the Shibuya incident arc. If, we're being specific, that's where Gojo came across Choso, Hanami, and Joko and they tried, teaming up on him and whatnot. Even though Gojo only fought them for a very short period of time, it left remnants of Gojo's cursed energy that made cursed spirits avoid the entire floor. Which is actually insane when you think about it. This man is so strong, his residuals managed to scare off cursed spirits, which is, I still can't fathom it. I don't think anyone else is on this level. Ajichi also reveals that the people who were affected by a 0.2 second domain are all fine, and those who were affected return to normal. Walking up behind Gramps and Utahime now atop the roof, Gojo and Ajichi arrive as the Day of Reckoning has begun. Elsewhere, Arume asks what time the fight is going to take place, to which Sukuna reveals that they didn't really specify a time, but as he says that, he's able to feel Gojo's aura emanating in his direction. Back in the hallway, and just moments before they made it up to the roof, Ajichi confronted Gojo on why he always wanted him to construct the barriers for him. Turning back and looking at his close friend, Gojo tells him that it's because he trusts him more than anyone else. Now, atop the roof and slamming his hands onto the ground in preparation for his barrier, Ajichi just thinks on how he's someone who's always fled. No, someone who didn't even have the courage to flee and was given the courage to run by a friend. Despite everything, Ajichi braces himself and knows that he must live up to Gojo's expectations, either that or die trying. In front of the two, and while using her curse technique called Solo Forbidden Arena, it's explained that any sorcerer of her choosing, including Utahime herself, will have their curse energy reserves and output temporarily enhanced as long as they remain within range. To excel at Jujutsu is to excel at subtraction. The degree to which a sorcerer can emit cadence, movement, and other elements that relate to their curse technique determines their skill, and Utahime leaves nothing out. Words, gestures, dance, music, elevating the simple technique to that of a ritual boosts its effectiveness by 120%. Utahime's curse technique allows her to boost the chosen sorcerer's curse energy, and as Gojo himself also began chanting to add to his own technique, 9 ropes, polarized light, crow, and declaration between front and back, it's revealed that just like our girl, Gojo has also never left anything out, and with the combination of the trio's curse energy, he shoots forth his 200% hollow purple. As Gojo's ability blasts forth, Sukuna manages to take notice of it and throws up his hands trying to block the entire attack. With the buildings all around him exploding due to hollow purple, Sukuna's defenses are undoubtedly breached as the building he was standing on is completely demolished, causing it to fall to the ground below. Urame, who was like next to Sukuna at the time of the attack, has also not been seen since this moment. So like, correct me if I'm wrong on that or anything, but after this moment, she's seemingly vanished from reality. So she's either gone or she sneaked off, managing to like survive that attack, probably healing up somewhere. Either way, as the smoke slowly fades, it's made evident that due to Ichichi's barrier, Sukuna actually misread Gojo's first move. Like, even though he knew where he was, he didn't sense the insane curse energy output until the last moment. Bursting through the smoke, Sukuna, with one less hand, somehow managed to tank the first attack, leaving the true battle between history and today's strongest sorcerers to continue. So, skipping back just before the blast, Sukuna and Urame were located at the Shinjuku Center, which is around 4 to 5 kilometers away from the Shibuya building Gojo was currently on with his team. Having strolled or probably just teleported across that distance in a matter of moments, Gojo sets the record straight and tells the King of Curses that he's the challenger here. The challenger though, Sukuna standing there finds it utterly pathetic that Gojo would state that after landing a surprise attack. In his eyes, and as he brings his hands together, Gojo is no more than a fish atop his chopping board, one slightly fresher, but still a nameless fish. Flaring up his curse energy, Sukuna just remarks that it's time he starts peeling back Gojo's scales. Gojo asks him why he's still wearing that face, and guesses that Sukuna's original thought was to steal Megami's body so he'd hold back during the fight. Unfortunately for him, our man's been through a specific set of training that allows him to go all out on anyone who resembles any sort of resemblance to the great Toji Fushiguro. Considering that Gojo himself trained Megami, he probably knows exactly how many hits his student could take before he dies, and given that Sukuna had survived death while possessing Yuji's body, Gojo thought it would be prudent to only start worrying about Megami's welfare after he kills the person in control. Initiating the conflict, the duo dart at each other, both just narrowly dodging each successive strike. Dropping to the floor just out of range of Sukuna, Gojo flicks out his hand straight into his opponent's nuts, sending them shooting into the side of a nearby building, and out the other side crashing into some stairs behind it. Getting up, he's instantly harassed by Gojo, who, stomping in his direction, proceeds to kick him in the gut so he's perfectly placed in the middle of an overpass bridge platform. Continuing to stomp down, Gojo collapses the platform Sukuna was on, making his footing extremely unstable. Taking the opportunity to catch him off guard, Gojo activates his infinity and levitates the bridge into the sky, before tossing it directly at a large skyscraper. Resisting the force of the platform, Sukuna uses dismantle, or what I assume to be dismantle, to cause the structure to collapse. Then, making it over to a nearby roof in the flash of an eye, Sukuna pulls up his hand and sends a massive slice using dismantle to cut the building directly behind Gojo in half. With our man turning around to look at it, Sukuna quickly rushes him, throwing a fat right hook that catches Gojo off guard. However, as the punch connects with his infinity, he decides to deactivate his technique in order to physically take Sukuna inside of the collapsing structure. Following him up the hallway, Gojo quickly opens a door for a moment that blinds the two from seeing exactly what ability they're about to throw at each other. Catching them both off guard though, the building crashes into the ground below, bringing their previously intense fight to a brief pause. Walking out of the debris while all of the smoke slowly starts to disperse, Gojo jokes that, well, he's just gonna pin all of this destruction on Sukuna once he gets out of here. Sukuna though points out that he really can't say anything, quickly making Gojo realize that Mei-Mei's actually streaming this entire fight to the world. Also, I just want to cut myself off for a moment to say thank you to everyone who watches my content. From the hardcore goated Patreons who have helped me with like extra cash to find editors, which is now like allowed with weekly uploads, to just the casual viewers for the support down in the comment section. We're about to finally hit 170,000 subs now, and I truly never expected such a dope little community to spawn from these stories I make. If you do want more content from me, not that it's like brand new content or anything, it's kind of rehashed, I do have a second channel in which every fight I've talked about in my larger videos, like the 6-hour and 8-hour ones and stuff, is getting re-uploaded there. I've also got a Discord down below, which I'll leave and everything, same with the other channel, in which I usually release spoilers for Jujutsu Kaisen and kind of just hang out in the chat there and talk with people from time to time. So that stuff all down below, like I just said. But again, thank you for 170,000 subscribers, but let's get back into this video and the hands that we're about to witness. Either way, when it comes down to Gojo's limitless technique, it allows him to be completely untouchable. To get around this, and in a similar way to what Hanami and Jogo did, Sukuna is using domain amplification to neutralize his curse technique. Confused slightly on what domain amplification is, Yuta explains to everyone while they watch the fight that he saw something similar in Mikamaru's footage. He pretty much said like what I exactly said before about Jogo and Hanami using domain amplification to nullify like Gojo's technique and everything. Hikari points out that it does seem like Gojo's domain has been neutralized, but he's still confused how. The old G, Kusakabe, lets them all know that it's more of a refined version of a simple domain. If one sheaths themselves in a domain without imbuing your own curse technique, you allow the opponent's technique to flow into that empty space, thereby neutralizing it. Angel points out that the main drawback to domain amplifications is that you can't simultaneously use your own innate technique. No one, not even Sukuna, is an exception to this rule. So, in her eyes, if Sukuna has another way to deal with Limitless other than domain amp, then Gojo will 100% lose. Confused on why they don't just use the domain expansion, Miwa inquires as to why. She knows that immediately following the domain, one's technique becomes unstable. So it would make sense for Sukuna to challenge a domain first. Karara notes that it is easy to say that, but depending on the outcome of that domain battle, the fight would be over, which in both of the girls' eyes is the correct battle strategy. Yuji though, having been told something by Gojo, reveals that he's pretty sure the domain's short hit effect negates Gojo's technique to begin with. Perking up, Wee Wee wonders if it's because Sukuna doesn't think he can win in a domain expansion against Gojo. Still, Shoko points out that, yeah, you are right, but Gojo probably would have opened one if that was the case, so she finds it hard to believe that Gojo wouldn't be able to foresee that as well. Standing there, Choso ponders the question of what would happen if Gojo's domain did clash, as from what he was told, Sukuna's domain is a barrierless domain. Hearing this bizarre statement, everyone just reacts in shock, unable to believe that his domain doesn't even have a barrier. As an example of just how impossible this is, Kusakabe asks Miwa to toss him that water. However, after she gives him the bottle, he throws it back, telling her to give him the water, not the bottle. Confused, Miwa just facials the absolute hell out of Kusakabe, while in behind them, Mei-san explains that expanding a domain without a barrier is like trying to hold water without a bottle. With no container, can you even accumulate water? Can you paint on thin air without a canvas? With no stem, root or leaves, can a flower bloom from a seed? Maki compares it to using software without even having a PC to run anything on. It's frankly unfathomable in their eyes, it's completely impossible. Even still, she notes that Megumi's domain was never enclosed within a barrier, and having heard that before Megumi was given his grade promotion, Kusakabe explained that to use it, he actually had to use an existing structure to enclose his domain. Noritoshi Keimo, or as we know him now, Goro Kenjaku, was able to pull it off by himself, so it does prove that it can happen. Choso, who actually fought during that battle, pointed out that they'd prepared to use a simple domain on Kenjaku while Tengen dismantled his domain from the outside. However, because of the barrierless domain, it was the simple domain that was torn apart. Miwa, who's confused over what exactly would clash in this attack, states that the short hit effect is imbued within the barrier itself, so it can only clash with another barrier. She also realizes that, well, everyone's talking as if their domains are a given, but domains devour an insane amount of curse energy, so wouldn't avoiding using them make sense? Inumaki speaks up and notes that, well, it doesn't really matter since Gojo has an infinite amount of curse energy. Ino knows that fact isn't actually true, and it's just due to how he's skilled at using his specific technique. If his curse energy consumption rate ends up being less than what he actually replenishes, then it could technically run out. That's just working under the assumption though that he's using it like normal. If he changes things up and starts using domains consecutively, then that could be a completely different story. Not having even mentioned what Sukuna is actually capable of as well in fighting, Kashimo speaks up to state that the sharpness of his technique's activation is unparalleled. The way he can switch things up in a matter of milliseconds from innate techniques to domain amplifications is utterly amazing. If Gojo literally wasn't who he is, then Sukuna would comfortably be winning in terms of curse energy utilization. What's more, his total curse energy output is probably even more than Yuta's. From what he can physically tell, he'd say it's probably double the amount that he actually has. Momo, who's been pretty quiet this entire chat, speaks up and feels that maybe nobody, not even them, knows how this is going to play out. If Gojo and Sukuna's domains do clash, who knows what could possibly happen? Then, right on that exact moment, and after all of this insane build-up that we just went through, Higurumas signal that they are about to begin the domain clashes. Back in Shinjuku, both Sukuna and Gojo throw up their respective hand signs to simultaneously open the Infinite Void and Malevolent Shrine. With Sukuna now appearing above his shrine and Gojo standing a few feet back, it's explained that the two are evenly matched. They form a perfect pair within Gojo's barrier, which in turn meant that both guaranteed hits overlapped each other, then cancelled themselves out. In this battle, and as the two expand their domains, should either one of them sustain severe damage, it will cause the collapse of their domain, and the other one's sure hits will immediately take effect. Back at the TV room, Kusakabe and Meimei both react in shock as somehow, even with the domains active, they're still evenly matched. In Shinjuku, the pure force of the two overlapping domains caused the surrounding area to start getting atomized. Sadly for Gojo, the effective range of Sukuna's domain reaches even beyond that of a barrier. And just as Yuji notes that a domain expansion is weak from the outside, Gojo's domain cracks and shatters as it's shown that below it, Sukuna's domain now sits perfectly fine. With no protection against Sukuna's sure hit technique, the effect immediately flies forth and seemingly cuts down the strongest sorcerer of today. Having taken the slash to the neck, Gojo nonchalantly activates his reverse curse technique, which everyone back at the lair reacts to. Higuruma states that as long as Gojo stays in range, the slashes will never stop coming. Choso, who assumes escaping is probably the port of call for Gojo, is backed up by Hikari, who somewhat agreed with him. However, it's more that Hikari assumes Gojo will make a dash for the exit, whereas Kusakabe realizes that teleporting is out of the question, since it's an application of the limitless technique. Due to the use of his domain expansion and it being destroyed, it's plausible that for a moment he can't use his curse technique, which, like they state, means he's in store for one hell of a beatdown. Back inside of Sukuna's domain expansion, Gojo is relentlessly slashed over and over again by the sure hit effect of the domain. Somehow though, Gojo manages to calm himself as he knows for a fact that when it comes down to techniques, Limitless is far better. Having been able to consistently overpower Sukuna's sure hit effect with his use of reverse curse technique, Gojo, just like what everyone else had expected, makes a dash for the exit. Sukuna immediately makes a dash to keep up with him while remarking that he isn't going to just let him escape. Grabbing his leg though, Gojo, still while constantly getting slashed, pulls him in and knees Sukuna into the floor. Towering over him, Gojo attempts to land a curse energy infused overhand, but misses, only cracking the floor as Sukuna manages to quickly weasel his way out. Standing there and looking at his opponent, Sukuna remarks that Gojo's still moving pretty well, considering that he's been activating his reverse curse technique at full output in order to survive the constant slashing. Gojo, on the other hand, notices something extremely important. To him, it looks like Malevolent Shrine itself is the heart of the domain, not Sukuna. Back inside of the headquarters, Yuji ponders what would happen if someone did destroy the heart of the domain, or like the shrine specifically. The big brain Kusakabe brings up that objects inside of domains don't tend to hold any special meaning or significance, so think of it as like it wasn't even there to begin with. Mei-san thinks that if it is a symbol of the domain, then you wouldn't even be able to destroy it, and even considering Gojo's insane skills, it doesn't look like he's taken any measures to actually try to destroy it. Suddenly, Gojo activates the new Shadow style Simple Domain, taking Kusakabe by surprise as he probably didn't expect to see this one. Yuji though noted that Gojo said one time he could use it, but wasn't able to actually teach it. During the battle, he was able to use his Simple Domain to counter the sure hit effect while simultaneously using reverse curse technique to heal his body. Confused, Yuji wonders how one even manipulates their own curse energy while reverse curse technique is active. Again, Gojo activates another use of the Simple Domain before darting at Sukuna and attempting to strike him. In an instant, he's once again pounded by the sure hit effect, layering Gojo with a plethora of cuts though. Again, he activates another use of Simple Domain and reverse curse technique, causing Sukuna to call this all a little bit tedious right now. Randomly though, everyone back at the headquarters is taken by surprise when they see Gojo start attacking Sukuna once more without using reverse curse technique to heal himself. Someone wonders if he's running low on curse energy, but Yuta refutes this as it's frankly impossible. There's no limit to Gojo's curse energy, even though there totally is. Speaking up though, Eno mentions that, like he said before, the assumption rate could currently be off. Right after domain expansion, he started using reverse curse technique and maximum output, which uses up twice as much curse energy, and that's not even taking into account the fact that Sukuna is also rushing at Gojo himself. With the two powerhouses of the series also rushing at each other once again, and the cuts not stopping for Gojo, everyone wonders if Gojo is about to lose. Jumping on Sukuna though and wrapping his hands around the back of his head, Gojo activates his curse technique reversal, before leaning back and pulling his hands up in preparation to end the fight. Blown away with what he's just witnessed, Yuta wonders if it's even possible. In his mind, the reason he wasn't able to heal himself for a moment was because Gojo was using reverse curse technique to heal his exhausted curse technique. Unleashing Red, Gojo shoots forth a blast of reverse curse technique, propelling Sukuna back into the shrine that makes up the center of his domain. Noting that he somehow managed to survive the blast, Gojo activates reverse curse technique to heal, and jokes that damn, this dude is really turning into a pain on the ass. Going into like more depth on the insane feat Gojo just did, Yuta explains that a curse technique which has been burned out by using domain expansion is an entirely different matter than physical damage. It's like when a machine overheats, if it isn't broken, you have to let it cool down or it won't work again. Interpreting this, Maki makes it easier to understand by saying that reverse curse technique can repair damage, but it can't help with the cooling effects of it. However, it looks as if this understanding of the ability is completely wrong. Back in Shinjuku, and having made it out of the effective range, Gojo asks if Sukuna is able to expand the size of his area. Not even giving Gojo a second to think, Sukuna instantly expands the size of a Malevolent Shrine's domain expansion to its maximum. In the same moment, Gojo, to the shock of everyone, also expanded his Infinite Void for a second time. With everyone watching, they wonder if Gojo's really dumb enough to just fall into the same trap as before. Mei notices it first though, and Higuruma, who, by the way, like for a new sorcerer, is so big brain, states that Gojo switched conditions on the external and internal conditions of his barrier, which, in simple enough terms for myself and Yuji to understand, means that Gojo this time is able to protect himself against the attacks from outside of his domain. Reinitiating the battle once more, both Gojo and Sukuna trade hands back and forth, but not once do the hits actually end up landing on either side. Jumping back, Gojo is absolutely blown away as he understands that somehow Sukuna was able to use his domain expansion and amplification at the exact same time. On top of that, he's becoming more comfortable inside of his own Infinite Void, and his curse energy output is only increasing. So, in usual Jujutsu Kaisen combat, you cannot use an innate technique that is etched into your body while using a domain amp. But if you go and imbue your domain with a technique itself, then this is an entirely new situation. Throwing a punch, Sukuna manages to dodge back out of the way. However, as he pushes, trying to strike Gojo, the Six-Eyes Maniac manages to evade the strike and thump the side of Sukuna's body. Managing to spin out of Gojo's sight, he quickly understands that somehow, and while inside of his own domain, Sukuna turned off his sure hit effect. Knowing that the only ones who are unaffected by Infinite Void are Gojo and anyone he touches, Sukuna's plan is to expand his effective range and increase the power of the Binding Vow even further than he did in Shibuya with Megami. By using the Binding Vow, Sukuna is able to further increase the power of his domain outside of Gojo's domain. He does that by removing his sure hit guarantee inside of the domain, while simultaneously also keeping himself safe from Infinite Void by touching Gojo. Due to all of this, and again just like last time, Gojo's domain collapses and the man is followed by a plethora of strikes that seemingly knock him away from Sukuna. With everyone back at the TV station headquarters place, whatever it honestly is, I don't have a clue what to even call it, react in horror to what's going on in the current battle, Hajime states that if Gojo dies here, he is going out to fight next, so don't even try and stop him. Over in Shinjuku, Gojo activates another technique that he notes he hasn't used much since he mastered his domain. Seeing this, Kusakabe spits out his smoke in awe of just having seen Gojo use the Falling Blossom emotion. For those of you who forgot, because I think it's only been used like maybe 2 or 3 times throughout the series, it's a secret art of the big 3 families, an anti-domain technique. All in all, it's an application of curse energy that automatically repels anything you touch. It wouldn't ever be able to do something against the complex domain like Infinite Void, but if you're up against something like simple slashes, it's pretty useful. Jumping in, Shoko says that he most likely used it so he can heal his burned out curse technique, or at the least buy some time. Again though, like what is this, the 3rd time now? Gojo blows them all away as he activates another use of Infinite Void. Unlike all of the previous uses though, this time it's completely massive in comparison, and in Kishimo's eyes, it looks as if Gojo was trying to encapsulate all of Sukuna's domain within his own barrier. Mei thinks that it's a bad move trying to expand a domain to that size, as it'll drastically lower its effectiveness, and like Higuruma states, even if the domain isn't destroyed, it's still pointless unless he wins the battle inside of it. Suddenly, Gojo's domain cracks, putting everyone on edge and making them think that it's about to fail. Momo though quickly speaks up that no, it's not broken, in fact the barrier is quickly changing size and now it's only a fraction of the original size. With Gojo's domain only like the size of a basketball now, Kusakabe remarked that this is frankly impossible, causing Mei to joke about how many times they've said these words today. Maki curiously questions its outward appearance and if the inside is that of a similar size. Kusakabe agrees with her, as that's why when you're usually trapped inside one, you can't get out unless you find the edge of the barrier. Even if you find that edge, a normal domain is resistant to attacks from the outside, so escape is still extremely limited. What's most important when it comes to a barrier technique is a concrete image. Usually, if you try and envision a barrier too small enough to hold yourself and an opponent, it would just collapse. Just like the prison round though, and probably due to his time being confined in a small space there, is now allowing Gojo to take that and implement it into his domain during the battle. Still, Kusakabe can't grasp the process around how he's able to change the conditions of his domain each time he uses it. Barriers, particularly domain barriers, typically have a set of internal and external parameters. By discovering their own blend of these parameters, every sorcerer is able to establish their own domain. Confused and piping their heads up, as obviously this wasn't how Higuruma and Hikari figured out their domains, like they open their domains by default as a part of their curse technique. In any case, they aren't usually things that can be changed easily. Kusakabe ponders if he changed the size of his domain because it was too difficult to maintain the larger surface mass, so he had to compress it to make things easier. Or maybe it was because he wanted to see if he could cover all of the Malevolent Shrine with an even larger barrier. With Gojo's domain beginning to shake back and forth at such a tremendous speed, the earth itself begins to rumble. May points out that even still, Gojo's domain has managed to hold, and Yuta states that Sukuna has also decreased his domain so he could increase the output of his curse technique. So pretty much now, if this version of Gojo's barrier does end up breaking, they'll enter a stalemate. However, Gojo will actually end up being on the back foot as he will run out of options technique-wise. Flashing back over to Shinjuku, sadly, once more, Gojo's domain is again shattered, and Sukuna emerges victorious for a third time in the domain struggle. It's either the third or the fourth now, I'm honestly losing track throughout the script here. Having watched his sensei reappear, Yuji screams out for him. However, in that moment, all of the other sorcerers are flabbergasted as they witness Sukuna's malevolent shrine start to crumble and fall to pieces. On top of that, it's shown that at some point throughout the domain struggle, Gojo was able to land a clean blow to the chest of Sukuna, causing the King of Curses to finally take some proper damage. Seeing this over their monitors, all of the sorcerers scream in joy, believing that Gojo still has a chance to win in this battle. Funnily enough, it was actually simultaneous. At the exact same time Sukuna destroyed Gojo's domain from the outside, Gojo had actually destroyed Sukuna's domain to the point that he wasn't able to maintain it any longer. Yelling at Miwa, Kusakabe asks if she was able to keep track of what's going on in this fight, or if anyone kept track of the time that Gojo's barrier was active. Speaking up, Mei reveals that it was active for 3 minutes and 9 seconds, but if it was more specifically after the moment that it was minimized, then that was exactly 3 minutes. Higuruma believes that now the domains have collapsed, neither of them will be able to use their curse techniques anymore. If that is the case, Maki thinks Gojo can make the first move, since he can restore his burnt out curse technique just like he did before. But sadly, Sukuna can also do the same with reverse curse technique, and speaking of himself, now that he knows how it works, Yuta theorizes that he could probably do it too, though, like he mentioned earlier, it can't be used to heal a burnt out curse technique, but it actually can. He's just tripping right now. The reasoning that Gojo actually showing this to Sukuna is a terrible problem for everyone is because, back in the past, Sukuna was able to split his spirit 20 times into 20 different objects called Sukuna's cursed fingers. After seeing this ability just once in the past, Sukuna learned how to turn himself into a cursed object, and now that he's seen this new ability, it's most likely he'll also be able to restore his burnt out curse technique. In Shinjuku, Sukuna boosts his way up onto a bridge, giving a moment of peace before noticing that random parts of the road start to get smashed out from below. Quickly jumping off the bridge and onto some railing nearby, Sukuna notices Gojo break his way up through the bridge behind him. Then, turning back around, realizes that his escape route was blocked by a ball of rocks that Gojo had perfectly floated there using his infinity. With absolutely nowhere to go, Sukuna throws up his hands to block and takes a kick that sends him sliding back along the sidewalk. Taking a moment to think about the fight, Gojo wonders why Sukuna has been stubbornly avoiding using any other curse technique than his own. Even when the strength of the barrier was lowered and Gojo had flipped the conditions on it, he didn't try to destroy it from the inside. Instead, he took the riskier option. While they cancelled out each other's sure hit effects from within the domain, Sukuna had no other choice but to use his domain amplification in order to beat his limitless curse technique, which was actually a massive advantage for our man. Still, as he saw earlier, within a domain, Sukuna is unable to use buildings to attack. In fact, until after Gojo's domain was destroyed, he technically had the upper hand for over 3 minutes. Yet, in spite of that, he can't seem to understand why Sukuna didn't ever attempt to make use of something from the 10 Shadows technique or Maharaga while in a domain. He has the memory of Megami and the conversation that happened between them, so he knows for a fact that someone of the exact same power died to a person like Megami. Gojo just ponders if he's scared he'll beat Maharaga in one shot. However, in that exact same moment, the wheel turns and blood begins to drip from his own nose. Fucking nosebleed though, Gojo was baiting our damn ass with that one, and in an instant, both him and Sukuna threw up their hands to perform another domain clash. Yuji points out that again they activated it at the exact same time, and Angel, who's right next to him, brings up that Sukuna can now restore his burnt out curse technique, or maybe just decided to hide the fact that he could until now. Kusakabe knows that within the next 3 minutes that it should take Sukuna to destroy Gojo's domain from the outside. Gojo will need to damage Sukuna to the point he can't maintain his domain from the inside. Shoko, joking that they probably shouldn't talk as if Gojo was on the back foot yet, brings up that if Sukuna is hit at all by Unlimited Void, then man is completely done for. Due to this, it's certain that if Gojo is able to destroy the Malevolent Shrine within the next 3 minutes, then he will win this battle. Inside of Shinjuku, and having flared up his cursed energy fists, Gojo pounds Sukuna with a barrage of punches that really only bruise the King of Curse's arms. Jumping up, Sukuna tries to quickly get over his shrine, however he's knocked into the floor, then, while incapacitated, is grabbed by Gojo's infinity and pulled towards himself. Having been flung towards Gojo, Sukuna just manages to block a devastating stomach punch. Randomly though, and I'm assuming man's used Yuji's divergent punch to delay the hit of his curse energy, Sukuna's Malevolent Shrine is completely destroyed, while in the exact same moment, Gojo's domain also ends. Falling to the ground and looking up, it's evident that this time, Sukuna took a serious blow, as half of his face appears to be missing. With everyone believing that when it comes down to domain struggles, Gojo is stronger, they all hope deep within themselves that he can win. Back in the battle and throwing a fat right hook, Gojo sends Sukuna straight back into the side of a bridge pillar, breaking it in the process. I don't even know what we're at now, this is utterly insane. And in that moment, Gojo and Sukuna launch another set of domain struggles. Yet, unlike all of the previous battles, something is actually different here for the first time, and Yuta can't help but feel like maybe, just maybe, Gojo was able to expand his domain earlier. Inside of the domain struggle, it is revealed that Sukuna was indeed busy healing his body, and because of that, he was late restoring his curse technique. It was less than 0.01 seconds, but Unlimited Void landed on him. As an infinite set of infinite information rushes into the cerebral cortex of history's strongest sorcerer and the King of Curses, our man, today's current demon rushes forth and pierces the chest of Darkness Incarnate. Only 2 minutes and 40 seconds after they expanded their domains, Gojo was able to collapse Malevolent Shrine within his innate compound. With nothing, not even the friction in the air available for Sukuna to use now, he stands there dumbfounded as the full effects of Satoru Gojo's Infinite Void connects with his brain. Not done yet himself, Gojo lets everyone know that crushing his heart was only the beginning. Now, he's gonna take everything from him. However, before he's able to even connect with Sukuna, a set of prolific words are spoken. With this treasure I summon, 8-handled, sword divergent, Scylla Divine, General, Maharaga. Skitting out with the fact that, Sukuna managed to summon him in that moment, Gojo just assumes that it hasn't had time to adapt to Unlimited Void yet, so surely he can destroy it in one shot. Activating Curse Technique Reversal, Gojo is just baffled when he witnesses Maharaga literally not care, and instead with his Sword of Extermination slashes down, completely destroying Gojo's Infinite Void. Falling to the ground now, Gojo can only gasp as he realizes that somehow Maharaga had already adapted to his domain expansion, allowing him to freely attack from the inside. Realizing that Maharaga had been summoned, Choso points out that it has the ability to adapt to any attack, even Unlimited Void. Using Reverse Curse Technique, and with Maharaga by his side, Sukuna knows that Gojo was well aware of the Shikigami's abilities. In the battles so far, both of the guys have had their domains cancel each other's out a total of 5 times. Gojo's Sure Hit effect targeted everything within their domain, whereas Sukuna's Sure Hit effect targeted everything inside the domain with the exception of himself. This means that the Sure Hit effect targeting Sukuna was still in place. Crazily enough, one of the duo was able to take on Unlimited Void a total of 5 times, while shouldering the burden of Maharaga's adaptation. This person wasn't Sukuna though. No, it was someone else entirely. Blown away with the revelation, Gojo quickly figures that somehow he managed to adapt to Unlimited Void within 0.01 seconds of his domain opening. Doing some more crazy deductions, he figures that, like I said, somehow Sukuna overcame the burden of Maharaga's adaptation ability. Then realizing he's wrong, states that the one actually taking the damage was Megami's soul. Deep inside the conscious of Megami's mind, we see him barely awake with Maharaga's wheel floating directly above him. Seeing Gojo now and wondering what's on his mind, Sukuna asks, "What's up?" To which Gojo says, "Nothing really, it just warms his heart to see him using such fraudulent abilities." Replying to his underhanded diss, Sukuna states that Unlimited Void is an ability that Gojo activated once inside of his domain. He originally expected it to be a pain in the ass trying to figure out this technique, and at the start of the fight he had planned to neutralize it first. So, while unable to use amplification within the domain, Sukuna used Megami Soul to adapt to Unlimited Void using his own 10 Shadows technique. As a result, he wasn't able to use anything other than what was originally imbued into his own domain. Knowing that all Megami took then was the process of adaptation, not like the full effect of Infinite Void itself, Gojo begins pulling up his hand and remarking that Sukuna hasn't actually adapted Megami Soul itself to Unlimited Void, and if he opens his domain once more, he'll destroy him in one attack. Not phased over this though, Sukuna kinda just laughs and taunts Gojo while telling him that he's no longer able to open his domain. Instantly, and as he tries activating it once more, blood begins streaming from his nose, and everyone back at headquarters still watching the monitors begins freaking out over the possible outcomes. By the way, who do you guys think has left from the headquarters? Like, we can see a few people are still there from like flashing around between now and like what's released. I have a few thoughts in mind, like, well, where's Takabura? I haven't seen him since the start of their conversation, I'm pretty sure, back at like 2:20 something. Anyway, getting back to the story. Having found a way in now, Sukuna remarks that using Reverse Curse technique to heal his exhausted innate technique looks to have strained his physical brain quite a bit. To him, it's evident that his brain, more specifically the prefrontal cortex where the information on curse techniques is located, has been destroyed and repaired far too many times using Reverse Curse technique to heal his burnt out curse technique now. Oh my god, man, the amount of times I have said curse technique, reverse curse technique throughout this video, like, I am so confused, and I've probably messed it up like once or twice. I probably have. Anyway, terrified at the fact that Gojo had been using such a wild technique, Yusta just screams that this is way too risky. They all know that the brain, especially that section of the brain, is the most important, and you can't even compare it to simply repairing someone's normal bodily damage. Shoko speaks up, nervous over the fact that she kind of assumed by now that Gojo had gotten used to this effect on his brain. However, it looks like he's beginning to suffer. On top of that, Sukuna has actually done it fewer times, so he's in a much healthier battle condition. Back in Shinjuku, and as Gojo drops to one knee, Sukuna states that Gojo has reached his limits. Even if he could have expanded his domain again, he would have lost the instant that he did. Not to mention the fact that he wouldn't even be able to make it precise enough to actually be a threat to Sukuna. Taunting him like the demon he truly is, Sukuna lets Gojo know that next up, he'll bring the circumference of his domain inwards. From there, he'll be left with nowhere to run, and as he carves him up, he'll simultaneously adapt to his infinity. Saying his final goodbyes, he states that Gojo was born into an era without Sukuna, and was hailed as the strongest of that era. Yet, in the end, he just turned out to be plainly ordinary. Saying those prolific words, domain expansion, one last time, Sukuna proceeds to unleash his domain. However, in that exact moment, all of his eyes begin bleeding profusely and the domain fails. So, crazily enough, from the time of the previous domains, this last conversation had happened in 10 seconds. And yet, just like Gojo, Sukuna's brain had sustained enough damage to now make an expansion impossible. Jumping up and laughing at Sukuna after seeing this, Gojo just notes that it looks like it's hitting him pretty hard now. Then pointing at Mei's crows, he knows that all of his students are watching him put his life on the line, so he's gonna go ahead and keep showing off for them. Jumping forth with a speed that Sukuna is unable to keep up with, Gojo throws a fat right hook to let his opponent know that he still has a long way to go to defeat him. Over inside of the main group's hideout, Kusakabe asks who there had been seriously punched by Gojo before. A few people speak up noting that, well, he didn't hit them, but they tried their best to punch him as hard as they could, and it was physically impossible. Due to only like a few people taking a hit though, Kusakabe, who I'm assuming has as well, says that his fists are enhanced with curse energy, and on the moment of impact, blue repeatedly absorbs the surrounding space. It feels as if you're being counterattacked after preparing for a regular blow. Karara wonders if it hurt, and Hikari along with Yuta both reveal that they puked after the hit they took. Nanami once told Yuji that if he planned on continuing as a sorcerer, then he shouldn't compare himself to Gojo. He stated that he put a massive deal of effort behind his critical hits, but Gojo could casually perform them as if it was an everyday thing. Putting them all back on track though, and what Kusakabe was mainly trying to explain, was that from here on out, when it comes to straight hands, he doesn't have a clue what Gojo is doing. Back in Shinjuku, it's shown that Gojo is completely dominating Sukuna in a physical fight. He boosts down a building while smashing Sukuna into every level, before turning around and tossing him over the road. When Sukuna lands, Gojo uses all of the rubble that had previously broken away from the building to entrap the King of Curses inside a brick coffin. Exploding out of the reinforced brick, Sukuna darts forth and quickly ducks a head kick from Gojo. Getting caught under his trap though, Gojo slams his leg down, only to see Sukuna flip out of the way and prepare his own axe kick. All of a sudden he stops though, as he sees what seems like Gojo running at such a high speed it's begun creating a circle of after images. Thinking that he has the upper hand now, Gojo darts into strike, but Sukuna manages to spot the real image and grab his hand before following up and punching him straight in the face. Being sent backwards, Gojo quickly regains his orientation and lands atop a nearby streetlight. Walking towards him, Sukuna explains that Furu's incarnation, used to manifest Maharaga along with the wheel, represents complete circulation and harmony. Once Maharaga has been attacked, the wheel turns and the adaptation begins. With that said, the wheel turns and Maharaga seemingly adapts. Gojo knows that when Sukuna uses domain amplification and touches him, the wheel turns black, so it's safe to assume then, in his eyes, that it interrupts the adaptation process. If Sukuna can't activate his domain, but can use amplification, it's probably because the area of his brain originally damaged was in charge of barrier techniques. Over with Sukuna now as he slowly strolls forth, he thinks that Gojo is most likely only using laps to avoid having his other techniques adapted, which makes perfect sense in his eyes. As the lights then go green, the two of them rush at each other once more, clashing in the middle of the road. With the light Gojo was just on falling behind Sukuna, he quickly grabs it and biffs it towards Gojo. However, it freezes as the object connects with his infinity. Back over with the main group now, as they all note that its random Maharaga hasn't reappeared. May suppose that it had already adapted once Unlimited Void was used for a 5th time. Taking that knowledge in, Hikari deduces that maybe the wheel has to turn a few times in order for Sukuna to adapt to Gojo's limitless technique. Then, just like they assumed, and as Sukuna asked if Gojo had been paying attention to his ability, Owlman explains that he needs 4 spins in total, which technically means only 3 more spins of the wheel until Maharaga fully adapts to Gojo's infinity. Walking towards each other again, Sukuna jokes that they now have a countdown to when Gojo's idiotic smirk will be wiped from his face, causing our Go to smile right back and tell him the same damn thing. In fact, Gojo takes it one step further, saying that he'll beat him dead before he even makes it to the 3rd spin. Still eagerly watching the battle, Hana questions if Gojo's forgotten about Megumi, to which Yuji says that man might really have. Hearing them and looking ready to throw some hands himself, Kashimo jokes that it's fine, let him forget Megumi. Needing to forget Megumi because man's in a slightly tight spot right now, Yuji watches as Maharaga's wheel spins for the 2nd time, meaning that there's only 2 more spins until Gojo's infinity will be fully adapted to. Turning his hands into perfectly constructed orbs of blue curse energy, Gojo flings them at Sukuna, making him acrobatically flip out of the way as the ability burns the bridge from existence. Capturing Sukuna within his range, Gojo sticks both of his hands forth and creates more curse energy orbs that circle his target, leaving them with nowhere to escape. Somehow escaping though, Sukuna manages to duck down before darting off, causing all of the orbs to immediately change direction and start tracking his new position. Boosting it around one of the nearby pillars, Gojo flies up and quickly blocks Sukuna's kick. Having gained the advantage now, he follows up by kicking his opponent down towards the road below. While falling, the wheel spins for the 3rd time, making everyone back at the TV room get more and more nervous over the impending adaptation. Yuji curiously wonders if it's time that's needed for the wheel to adapt, or if it was battle experience. Realizing what Yuji was trying to say, Kusakabe solidifies his question by also pondering if A. Does it take one attack, then time for the wheel to understand, then adapt, or B. Is it adapting after taking multiple blows? Still not even sure himself, he points out that Gojo hasn't used anything other than laps, so he doesn't even know, and compounding that, Kashimo states that either option is actually possible. That's the reality of the situation. Following the King of Curses through one of the nearby building's windows, Gojo remarks that from now on, he's gonna give him hell. In his eyes, he's convinced Sukuna that all he's using is blue, so with this timing, he won't be able to react. Pulling up his hand and firing a point-blank shot of Curse Technique Reversal Red, Gojo just watches as the wheel turns black, signifying that Sukuna had activated his domain amplification. As the technique hit, and because of what I previously just mentioned, Sukuna was just barely able to minimize the damage in time. Activating his reverse curse technique to heal, Sukuna thinks that he expected this. Even if amplification can neutralize the low output of Limitless, it can't fully cancel out blue or the reversed red. Yuji and Kusakabe both react in abject horror as they realize that at this rate, Sukuna will fully adapt to his technique. Looking heavily beaten and bruised, Sukuna turns around to remark that Gojo is sloppy, and questions if the greatest sorcerer of today had lost his cool once his hand was red. Randomly though, Gojo doesn't attack, and instead, he just tells his opponent that, you know, like the red he shot back before? Well, it hasn't actually exploded yet. Suddenly, taking one of the hardest back shots in the figurative world that is Jujutsu Kaisen, Sukuna gasps in pain as he realizes that he, the King of Curses, was taken from behind. Quickly calculating the building's layout, he figures that Gojo must have planned from the start to have Red strike after one full lap. Not giving him a chance to recover, Gojo follows up and pounds Sukuna so damn hard with a black flash that physically knocks Sukuna out for a moment. Everyone back at the TV room just watches in awe as they never expected such an ability to land, let alone be as successful as it was. Back in Shinjuku, blood pours from Sukuna's mouth and the wheel falls, symbolizing the defeat of history's strongest sorcerer. Randomly though, the wheel picks up speed and spins for the final time, while at the exact same time, a stunned Gojo falls into a pool of darkness and Maharaga's demonic hands reach out for him. With nowhere to go, Maharaga grabs Gojo and slices his chest with the sword of extermination, leaving everyone's hope of survival on the brink of death. Beads of sweat drip from everyone's head as they worry about how things could have taken a turn for the worse with Gojo. Since Maharaga has arrived now, it means that he's completely adapted to Gojo's technique. Yuji however stays hopeful as in his eyes Maharaga only adapted to the infinity, which means it's only an equal fight now, and Gojo can heal up right away using reverse curse technique. Standing nearby and looking absolutely stressed, Shoko explains that she's been smoking a ton during this battle. Sadly, she thinks it isn't just a case of healing up again. Instead, it's more that Gojo's healing is gradually becoming slower than usual due to his extended use of red. If the already prolonged fight continues, it might end up with him not being able to use his curse technique reversal to heal as quickly, therefore he could actually lose. Though, she does pose that that situation is probably the exact same for Sukuna. Gojo's opponent is the King of Curses. Initially when the battle kicked off, everyone thought that it would be impossible for Gojo to win, and now, with what they've seen, that thought is slowly creeping back in. Even Gojo himself has begun thinking the same thing. Wondering how long it's been since he felt like this, it reminds him of a battle 11 years earlier against Toji Fushiguro, and how now he's beginning to feel the same satisfaction from fighting that's pushing him to an even higher degree throughout this battle. Being the strongest sadly comes with the title of also being the loneliest, and now the only thing that will truly satisfy him. Flying forth, Gojo hits Maharaga with a direct hit that pushes the God Shikigami back. Instantly following up, he tries to activate Red in order to finish him off, but Sukuna jumps back in and uses Megami's Rapid Escape to cover Maharaga and allow him to prepare for the next attack. Having watched his opponent try his best to evade every attack, Gojo mocks Sukuna, asking him how long he's going to rest for after taking the Black Flash, and that it was pretty obvious its effects are still hurting him. Suddenly, Sukuna mixes things up and throws a fire extinguisher to cover himself and make an opening for Maharaga to attack Gojo. As Gojo is caught up in his fight with Big M, Sukuna uses a new application of Megami's Max Elephant Shikigami to shoot a blast of water that mirrors Choso's piercing blood technique. Just as Gojo defends himself against Maharaga, Sukuna's attack lands and wounds his arm. Flying backwards, Gojo realizes that Sukuna is mainly waiting for his infinity ability to vanish, meaning that the fight would eventually turn into a pure 2v1 if it continues. Annoyed, he wonders how Sukuna is even able to use the abilities of the Shikigami without summoning them in the first place. Like, Megami has to go through this whole procedure, whereas Sukuna can wear the wheel and summon the Shikigami with what I'm assuming are just his thoughts here. Gojo knows that since Sukuna was able to adapt to his infinity ability, he's going to have to use more curse energy. That's why he's been simultaneously using the Shikigami. However, he does explain that if Sukuna wants to adapt to Red, it will take much longer to do so. Cutting his brainstorming off though, Sukuna beams his way back into the picture while stating that this isn't a 1v2 numpty, I'm the fraudulent one. Moving his hands together, Sukuna summons a brand new Shikigami called the Chimera Beast Agito, making this previously 2v1 a now 3v1 battle and putting Gojo even further onto the back foot. According to what I've seen online and everything since the chapter dropped, Chimera Beast is a mixture of Niue and Totality, which is probably a combination that I never actually saw coming and leaves so many other weird and wacky hybrids up for creation in the future. But obviously, you know, moving forward, Gojo himself even jokes that with those two giants standing there, Sukuna looks like a lost child. In a flash, the two beasts start the fight once more, with Gojo just barely being able to dodge the initial attacks. Randomly, and stealing some more of Megumi's techniques, Sukuna pops out of Gojo's shadows with his hands aimed like a pistol, and shoots another water blast like piercing blood from Max Elephant's ability, but Gojo dodges that too. Slamming his fists down, Gojo just misses as Sukuna backflips out of the way, allowing his boys to follow up with a dual hook from either side. Somehow dodging each of these large creatures and arriving behind Maharaga, Gojo proceeds to blast him with red, but it's barely even effective enough to burn the creature now. Figuring that man's probably stuffed if he doesn't do something completely insane here, Gojo deduces that he has to use this damn technique in order to be able to finish off Maharaga in one shot. It's a massive risk, as Sukuna will most likely notice the raised output, but it's a risk he's willing to take. With a glimmer of hope and a cheeky grin on his face, Gojo states that he's got no other choice, it's time to use the unlimited holo technique. I don't know about everyone else here, but things ain't exactly looking good for Gojo at the moment. Kinda Gojo over if you catch my drift. Unless this insane technique of his works in the next chapter, we might be in for another heartbreaking death, which, as we all know, is something Gege doesn't hold back on at all, and I really hope Mappa does well with Shibuya, which should be dropping like next weekend, I'm pretty sure. The entire calling Sukuna fraudulent is a great meme, but dude right now seems to be implementing cursed energy in a way that we've never even seen it get used before. Even Gojo is confused with how man's able to activate Megumi's abilities without hand signals or even saying anything. If you guys did enjoy this fight and want to keep up to date with just Jujutsu Kaisen in general though, then make sure to subscribe and be sure to leave a like, as it truly helps out with bringing a bunch of new people to this channel. Again, thanks for 170,000 subscribers. Be sure to check out the Patreon if you want to get slightly earlier access to my videos and everything. But for now, it's been your professional degenerate Diavolo, and I will see you all in a bit. Bye.